emotions, human-like emotions, we can say. So he's also in anxiety, agitation, and he's desperately searching for Sita. And far away, he sees that there are some signs of a skirmish, signs of it's not just a skirmish, a big fight. And then he sees a big bloodied mass lying over there in the distance. Now it's shocking. We might say that Lord Ram does not recognize Jatayu. But then, what happens is when somebody, the way a person looks normally and the way a person looks when they are wounded can be quite different. Sometimes when a person is severely wounded, it's very difficult to even, the body may be covered with blood and gore and everything. And it may be very difficult to recognize who or what it is. So, one of my friends works in the crime department. He says that actually if somebody is the victim of a crime, and identifying that the person is not very easy, especially if they have been severely wounded and mutilated and they're disfigured, for example. So that's why many times even if you call a relative and ask the relative to identify, they don't necessarily trust the relative's judgment, because they also try to do DNA and other things testing to try to find out who the person is. So Lord Ram, he sees from a distance, and when he sees this bloodied mess, then his first thought is that, this is the demon that has devoured Sita. And he picks up his bow, ready to shoot that demon. Now we may wonder, why would Lord Ram do something like this? So, basically, this shows the extent of anxiety that was there, that somehow something has to be done. And then as he's about to shoot, at this point, Jatayu is lying on the ground. He's looking and he sees, he's able to recognize Ram through his blood-soaked eyes. And yet, he sees Lord Ram raising his bow to kill him. And somehow, he's been uttering the name Ram, Ram, Ram gently. All that he can do at that time is raise his volume a little bit. And Ram, Ram, Ram. And when Lord Ram hears this, first of all, the very sound of his name surprises him. And he says, this voice seems familiar. When a person is very wounded and near death, sometimes their voice sound may not be the same, but there is still some similarity. He immediately lowers his bow. And even from the voice, he understands that this is somebody wounded. This is not somebody who is immediately a threat to me. And he runs forward with the bow by his side, and he recognizes Jatayu. And then he just runs and lifts Jatayu up and puts him on his lap and asks him, what happened? And then Jatayu narrates to whatever capacity he has. With his final breaths, he tells him that Sita was abducted by Ravan. I tried my best to save her, to protect her, but Ravan was too wily. I was slowed down by my age, and he cut off my limbs. And then, after telling this information, now Ram is devastated on one level that Sita has been lost, and now on that account Jatayu is also dying. And then seeing Ram's agonized face, Jatayu offers some consoling words. He says that Sita was abducted. Sita was taken in a period called, I think in the name Sanskrit given is Vinda. And it says that according to astrology, if an object or a person is lost in this time, that person will be found back. So at one level, Jatayu's attempt to stop Sita from being abducted fails, but he delays it. So it is interesting that sometimes people think of astrology as a spiritual subject. No, it's a material science. And Ravan had consulted an astrologer to decide what would be the best time to abduct Sita. This is not to criticize astrology, but it's just a material predictive knowledge. So he had thought, what would be a Shubh Muhurta to do this Ashubh Karya? It was a terribly inauspicious act, but he thought that, okay, what will be the auspicious time? What is the time for doing this act? So, although Ravan was very powerful, he also had an understanding that there are higher forces in the universe which exist, and sometimes they can work for us and sometimes they can work against us. So, by Jatayu fighting, that particular Muhurta had passed. That particular time had passed, and a Muhurta that was inauspicious for Ravan, that had started. We'll come back to the astrology later if you get time. The point over here is, even with his last breath, Jatayu is giving hope to Ram. He is dying, but instead of waiting, instead of expecting that Ram console him, he is reassuring Ram that Sita will be found. In fact, this is exactly similar to what Bhishma Pitama does. When Yudhishthir comes to meet him and Bhishma Pitama is on his deathbed. So at that time, the first words that Bhishma Pitama speaks is Aho kashtam aho anyayam yad yuyam dharmanandana. That, oh, how unfair, how atrocious is it that you have suffered so much. Although you are so virtuous, you are born to a virtuous mother. Although you have the Lord of fortune with her, you have the Lord of the goddess of fortune, you have Krishna with you. So it just shows the depth of the service attitude of the devotees over here. Bhishma is thinking that what is the state of mind of Yudhishthir and how can I be of service to him? Normally, if somebody is terribly sick in a hospital and they tell us, we go to meet them and we are hale and hearty and they say, oh, you have had such a tough life. Really, it just shows the selflessness of the consciousness. So, for a person to think like that at that time, Jatayu's heart is filled with such service attitude. The last words he speaks to the Lord is a word of assurance. And then uttering the names of Ram. While being in the lap of Ram, beholding the face of Ram, he departs from the world. And when he departs from the world, Lord Ram breaks down into tears. And then Sita has been abducted. And he could immediately have gone and searched for Sita. But he personally performs the last rites of Jatayu. And while he's performing the last rites of Jatayu, he is remembering his own father, Dashrath Maharaj. So he was unable to perform the last rites of Dashrath Maharaj. When he got the information from Bharat, he had just gone to a nearby river and offered water in that river. But now he performed the last rites of Jatayu. And in one sense, Jatayu got the ultimate farewell from the world. In this world, quite often, sometimes some people. So Jatayu was, in one sense, unsuccessful. His service to the Lord had failed. And when we hear about the pastimes of the Lord, We often hear about the Lord protecting in extraordinary ways. We think of how Arjuna was empowered single-handedly by the Lord to penetrate into the Kaurava army and neutralize Jayadratha. May think about how Hanuman was extraordinarily empowered to go alone into Lanka and not only find Sita, not only warn Ravan, but even set Lanka on fire. So there are stories in our tradition of devotees being empowered to do extraordinary things. And such stories are immensely encouraging. They are inspiring. In fact, they become the stuff of the religious contemplation for the devotees of how the Lord protects and empowers. And yes, these are the stories we need to contemplate on, no doubt. At the same time, the same tradition also describes that there are stories where somebody who may be having a glorious cause is still not protected. In the Mahabharata, there is the story of Abhimanyu. Abhimanyu enters into the Chakravyuh at the request of Yudhishthir, who is a great devotee. And yet he perishes. In the Ramayana, there is the story of Jatayu. So, at the material level, there may be sometimes success and there is sometimes failure. And when we are trying to connect with Krishna, when we are trying to develop our bond with Krishna, it is important that we understand how the relationship between us and Krishna works. If we have this vision that Krishna will always arrange things in a way that will be materially wonderful for us, then we will be disappointed. We may even be frustrated. Now that does not mean that Krishna does not protect. But to understand how Krishna protects, we need Jnana Chakshu. We need the eyes of knowledge. That you can call it Shastra Chakshu or Jnana Chakshu. And what does this Jnana Chakshu mean? So we'll talk about this in the second part of this talk, to understand how there is ultimately no defeat in devotion. That if you want to understand the nature of Krishna's love for us, we may say when we want to love Krishna, we also want to know, does Krishna love me? Does Krishna care for me? Does Krishna reciprocate with my love? And if Krishna is reciprocating, then why does it feel to me as if I am alone and abandoned at times? So to understand Krishna's love, now when we look at our existence, and we are trying to understand the nature of how Krishna's love is manifested in our existence. While we are living, how Krishna's love is manifested in our existence. We need to look at three things. One is, we need to understand the length of our existence, the depth of our existence, and the breadth of our existence. So Jnana Chakshu means understanding that our existence is far bigger than what we think it is. Now let's try to understand these one by one, and I'll come back to them. So length means that we often, say like a child, often thinks in terms of minutes. I am unhappy now. If I just get this chocolate, I'll be happy. I just play, I'll be happy. But the parents are maybe thinking of years or decades. You want to play now, you want to eat now, but you need to have a healthy life. So for a healthy life, you need to eat healthy food. You want to play now, but you need to study because you'll have a brighter career. So we often think of our existence, this is our human vision, We often think of our existence in the short term. We see a small picture of our life. But from Krishna's perspective, our existence goes over multiple lifetimes. So, this is birth and this is death. And there's another birth and there's another death. There's another death previously, there's a birth. Now, of course, we could get liberated and we go to an existence beyond birth. But the point is that if we are having a material conception of the length of our existence, then our faith in Krishna's love and Krishna's protection will always be shaky. That sometimes in this life, it is that somebody may seem to suffer throughout their life. And there may seem to be no remission, no decrease in their suffering. On the other hand, somebody else may seem to be enjoying. Actually, it's only seem to be. In this world, nobody has really lasting or fulfilling enjoyment. But even relatively speaking, some people may be suffering more than others. And some people seem to be enjoying more than others. But this life is just one phase in our lifetime. It's like if we consider our life, our existence to be like a play, it's like a multi-stage play. And just like in a multi-stage play, sometimes in an initial stage of the play, the hero might be being beaten again and again and again and again. And you may think, what kind of movie is this? The villain is winning, the hero is losing. But if you want to see the full play, we have to wait the future acts in the play, what happens. So the understanding that we are souls, the understanding that our existence does not end with this particular lifetime, that understanding of Atma helps us to expand our understanding of the length of our life. And yes, sometimes it may be that from this life's perspective, a particular person may not be